Episode 251 of the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. Yeah, that wasn't good. Let's start the show.
We are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift.
The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Clear leadership.
And we are, as a people,
not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual.
Opposed to secret society.
But ours was a nation of the ballot, not the bullet.
And a secret proceedings.
As a people, we cannot afford to let any group of citizens or any individual citizen live or labor under conditions which are injurious to the commonwealth.
Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities, all pledging allegiance under the same proud flag to this big, bold country that we love. That's what I see. That's the America I know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Welcome to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast. I am your host, Chris Hahn. Thank you for liking, rating, reviewing, telling your friends about the podcast. I don't know what else I could say, America. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to spin it. Some of you might be expecting me to. Joe Biden was a disaster last night, and I love Joe Biden. I think he's been a consequential and effective president, but I do not believe that he is up for the task of running for another 4-year term. He had a very low bar to clear last night, and we've talked about this bar on this program multiple times. He had a very low bar to clear. He did not clear it. And now there is a dilemma. What does the party do now? Joe Biden and the party have raised the stakes so high, saying that that Donald Trump is an existential threat to the republic, that they would be unpatriotic to go on like this. Donald Trump was on stage lying through his teeth all night long. Joe Biden was unable to counterattack any of those lies, including lies said about Joe Biden to his face. Joe Biden missed softball questions about abortion, about his own record. He stumbled over his closing statement. It was a disaster from start to finish. I'm sad to be saying this, right? I'm not one to criticize the president. But anybody who watched that debate last night knows clearly what happened last night is not going to end well for Joe Biden. The American people wanted to see that Joe Biden was up to the task. The knock on Joe Biden is that he is an old man, that he is too old to be president, too feeble to be president, too weak to be president. Those notions were reinforced by his performance last night. He will not recover from this. He will only get older between now and November. It's time to, make a call to the bullpen. The Democratic Party needs to figure it out. And Joe Biden is the only one who can make that call. He ran in a primary. The delegates were selected. The only way out for the Democratic Party is for Joe Biden to get himself off the ballot. And that's it. He needs to release his delegates. There needs to be difficult conversations between now and I would say next week with Joe Biden, with his family, with the leaders of the Democratic Party, like my former boss, Chuck Schumer, like former Speaker Pelosi, like Leader Jeffries, like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, they need to go speak to Joe Biden and they need to say, you did a great job, Joe, but it's time to retire. Any other leadership job where a performance like that was turned in, the board of directors of that company would be removing you. They'd be sending you off into retirement. They'd be giving you a gold watch, saying thank you for your service, and moving on. His performance last night was horrifying to me. I had a hard time watching it. I did watch the entire performance, as I'm sure we all did. You can hear in my voice, I'm just disturbed. Do I think that Donald Trump did anything to change perceptions of Donald Trump? No. I think he lied through his teeth all night long. I think he looked petty. I don't think he helped himself. But last night was not about Donald Trump. And Joe Biden picked this format, picked this date. This is campaign malpractice if they understood that Joe Biden was going to come out like that. The reason why I was so bullish on this debate was I've been on many campaigns. I would never put my candidate in a position where he was going to fail. So the fact that Joe Biden went out there like that they permitted Joe Biden to go out there like that, it's dumbfounding to me. Absolutely dumbfounding to me. I don't know who's running that campaign, but whoever they are, they need to get into another line of work. Because you basically lost it for your candidate to the point where even supporters like me are saying it's time for him to pack it up. God bless America. God bless Joe Biden, but I think it's over for him. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Welcome back. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. Watch me on News Nation, News for All Americans. I'm on all the time. I'm on every Tuesday and Friday morning at 7 and 8 a.m. and then various other times throughout the week. You could catch me on in the evening. Every now and then I'll pop up at odd times. But check me out on News Nation. And if you follow me on my social medias, I generally will post a picture of my shirt and tie before I go on the air. So we're talking about the debate. And a lot of people are asking me, I mean, my phone was ringing all night. My texts were going off all night. My social media accounts were buzzing all night with people asking me, what do we do? Look, I think there's a strong bench in the Democratic Party. I think Governor Gretchen Whitmer. I think Governor Gavin Newsom. I think Governor Roy Cooper. I think Wes Moore. You cannot ignore the vice president. I know a lot of people think that she's horrible. Well, I don't think she's ever had a chance to fully define herself nationally, and who knows what that is, and she should be able to make her case too. I think that there's a lot of talent in the Democratic Party, and I think that talent should have been given an opportunity, given what we now know about Joe Biden's abilities. I guess all these reports that he was going to be hopped up on something were false, because he clearly was not hopped up on anything. And, we can't ignore this. The party cannot ignore it. The man stood toe-to-toe with Donald Trump last night and let Donald Trump run roughshod over him. If Joe Biden is at the top of the ticket, as bad as Donald Trump is, as horrible of a president has he been? I mean, look, the man lied about his own record. He had 2% growth over the entirety of his career as president, Donald Trump. Tried to say he had the best economy of all time. Joe Biden's economy has been remarkably better than Donald Trump's in terms of GDP growth. Joe Biden's economy's been better. He's created more jobs. Donald Trump's the only president to leave office with fewer jobs than there were when he came in, other than Herbert Hoover. Not a good comparison. But yet here we are. Here we are in a situation where Joe Biden would likely lose to Donald Trump. Yeah, anything could happen between now and November. It's a long way off. But Joe Biden's not going to get any younger. He's not going to convince more people that he's up to the task between now and then. This was his opportunity. This is why the campaign believed they needed this debate. They needed to put the two of them on the stage together and show the American people that this was the choice. Well, they did it. They put them on the stage together. They showed the American people that this is the choice. And they showed the American people that one of the choices is a complete and total liar. And the other choice, I don't know if you'd let drive your car. I don't know how that makes for good decision making. I don't know how that allows us to make great choices. The choices that we have right now are not good. And I believe that Joe Biden's a patriot. I believe that he loves this country. I believe that he's done a very good job as president of the United States. You could argue all you want, but he inherited a mess from a maniac, and he brought stability. People forget about the year 2020. Every time they talk about Donald Trump, they forget about 2020 or they give him a pass. His leadership, his lack of leadership, his failure, his incompetence is why it was as bad as it was. But that said, elections are about the future. And the Democratic Party and Joe Biden need to come together in the next couple of days to resolve this. This is not something that should be stretched out into August. It is something that needs to be resolved in the next couple of days. I'm not saying they're going to pick a candidate. I think the picking of the candidate is going to get stretched out till August, which is fine. We're going to have an exciting convention for the first time in decades. Decades. 50 years, more than 50 years since there's been a candidate chosen at the convention of the Democratic Party, I believe. And it'll be must-see TV in the middle of August. I'm looking forward to it. But I'm telling you right now, Joe Biden, if he is a patriot, will do the patriotic thing. And he will step aside. I mean, there are people talking today about whether or not he's up to the job he has now. I don't believe that his inability to speak effectively on a stage disqualifies him from being president for the next 6 months. I don't believe that at all. But the election's in 18 weeks. America. The election is in 18 weeks. Not a lot of time to figure this out. Do we want another 4 years of Donald Trump? Do we want to put somebody up against Donald Trump that is unable to articulate the reasons why he should be given another 4 years? The reason why Donald Trump is no good for America? Joe Biden couldn't do his closing statement. Joe Biden couldn't answer the questions on abortion. I mean, that's the leading issue for the Democrats. He couldn't do it. I'm going to have a good weekend. I'm going to forget about this a little bit. But on Monday, I hope to God there have been some conversations. Listen to this. I'll be right back. We're not in a cult. We don't follow one person. We don't exalt that person, even when the evidence that that person can no longer go on is in our face. It's not October. It's not like we don't have a choice at this point. It's not like there's nothing that can be done at this point. I made it very clear last week after the debate what I felt. I made it very clear, both here and in other formats. And I got a lot of pushback. Not from Republicans who are, sitting back and letting us hang ourselves, but from other progressives, other people who have supported the president. They're basically like, get in line or get out. It's funny. That has been a major criticism from the left of the MAGA right. It's been a major criticism of mine. There used to be conservative thought. Now it's just whatever Trump thinks. Are we going to do the same thing on the left? Are we going to just fall in line because we have to? Again, we are not at a point where that is our only option. Right? I get it. And let me be perfectly clear. Defeating Trump is the highest priority. And if it was October and Joe Biden was in a coma, I would vote for Joe Biden. Because defeating Trump is the highest priority. But today, defeating Trump is also the highest priority. And Joe Biden understands that as well as anybody else. And I can't force Joe Biden out. Congress can't force Joe Biden out. The party at the convention can't force Joe Biden out. The only way for Joe Biden to get out is for Joe Biden to accept that he is no longer capable of leading the party, leading the country, and waging an effective campaign against a man who will fundamentally change this country if he is elected. Joe Biden couldn't push back on Thursday night against the myriad of lies being told by Donald Trump. Lies, outright lies. Joe Biden couldn't answer questions about issues that would have been favorable to Joe Biden. At one point, taking a question posed to him about abortion and turning it into a question about immigration. How is he going to lead the country? Now, I get it. There's a difference between being on stage and articulating and being in meetings. Aides to the president like to talk about how he's doing backflips in private. I have been out here on this show and on other shows over the last couple of months defending the president based on the information given to me by senior aides, given to all of us by senior aides to the president, people who've been around him. But I feel like I've been lied to. Honestly, I feel like I've been lied to. And when you have that feeling, you can't really trust what's going on. But we're not in a cult. The folks online and in other formats that are saying, you better get in line behind the president, they sound a whole lot like Trump and his supporters. Support me or else. That's not what I signed up for. That's what none of us should sign up for. I mean, even if you are a conservative in the Trump world here, it should not be support or else. This is the United States of America. This is a place where we should be able to question our leaders. Not just elected leaders, but people seeking to lead. We should be vigorous in our questioning of them. I say it all the time. Question everyone and everything, even me. I say it all the time. So this, believe us or get out of the party movement that has started online now, that sounds an awful lot like MAGA, and it is not for me. And it is not something that I think most Democrats are going to put up with. What Joe Biden did last week is going to be next to impossible to undo. Age comes for us all, America. And when it does, it is time to not really have the hardest job on the planet, right? Time for us to do something easier. Listen to this. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Watch me on News Nation. It is news for all Americans. I'm on all the time. Check me out there. I tweet out or Instagram out a picture of my shirt and tie right before I come on. So if you follow me on social media, you'll hopefully get an alert that I'm about to come on the air if you're scrolling at that given moment. The Biden team needs to do more than put Joe Biden out for a 1 or 2 minute speech in front of an adoring crowd read off a teleprompter if they want the American people to believe that, Thursday night was just a blip. He's not really like that all the time. I have suggested, and I'll suggest it here, that if they really want to prove that Joe Biden is up to the task, he needs to do several live, long-form interviews with the press and perhaps a press conference. Early in his presidency, Joe Biden gave one of the longest press conferences ever given. I think it was like 2 hours. He sat there with the press for 2 hours. And he traded questions and jarbs and whatever with them. Well, now would be a good time for that too. Do it in the middle of the day. Don't, these excuses I keep hearing. He had a cold. It was late. Okay, remember the 3 a.m. phone call ad? The President of the United States does not work 9 to 5. The President of the United States is a 24/7, 365 job. He could be woken up in the middle of the night. He could have long, late nights. Crises don't work around the schedule of an 81-year-old man. Crises come when they come. Crises come even if you have a cold. So all of these things we're hearing seem kind of ridiculous to me. I believe over the next couple of days, there will be a series of polls showing him losing in battleground states. And I also believe there will be a series of polls showing down ballot Democrats in the House and Senate losing in swing seats that they need to win. And I believe that will be the motivation for the leadership of the Democratic Party to come to Joe Biden and ask him to do the patriotic thing, get off the ticket, and let somebody else run. I don't know who that person's going to be. People dismiss out of hand that it's going to be Kamala Harris, that it won't be Kamala Harris. I don't believe that. I believe that she's got as much a claim to it as anyone, probably more claim than anyone to run for that seat right now. Oh, but her numbers are so low. Yeah, well, she's been beaten up mercilessly for the past 3 years and hasn't really had the ability to check it. She's the number 2. They've basically stashed her away. They've given her a portfolio and given her no ability to get it done. Well, she's the top of the ticket and has to go out there and campaign for herself. I think she'll be fine against the old man Donald Trump. Because he is a very old man too. 79 and 81 to me is the same age. And his debate performance wasn't exactly great either. In fact, I would say it was the second worst debate performance of all time by anybody running for president. The second worst. Of course, nobody noticed because everybody was concerned about Joe Biden. Concerned. We're not at a point where we have to say this is it. If we were, maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But I don't think we could have a dishonest conversation. I don't think we could say the man's vigorous and up to the task. I don't think that's the case. He himself made that point when he spoke in North Carolina the day after the debate. And he gave a very forceful speech. But again, it was a speech right off a teleprompter, and it was about 2 minutes long. I want to see him getting interviewed in a long format, in primetime live. I want to see him giving press conferences now, like this week. I get it. It's a holiday week. It's 4th of July. We're all working 2-3 days here this week. And then it's over. Then it's off to the beach and fireworks and making sure our dogs don't freak out, which is a big part of the 4th of July for me. It is it's political. It was political malpractice for them to even suggest this debate if they knew this was the condition he was in. Either that or they're living in such a bubble that they didn't notice. And that's even worse. So now you got to figure out a way to make up for it immediately. Because the calls for him to be removed as the party's leader, or really step down, he can't be removed, are going to grow louder with every poll that comes out. 74% of Americans in a poll taken over the weekend think he's too old to be president of the United States. By the way, 54% of Americans don't believe that Donald Trump should run either. You know what that means? That means whoever blinks first, whoever changes the top of their ticket, is going to win. I think that the Democrats will trounce Donald Trump in November with somebody other than Joe Biden. I am not confident at all that Joe Biden can win. In fact, I think he'd lose at this point. The biggest problem with his debate performance is that it basically reaffirmed things people already believed and actually made it crystal clear that that concern is going to be a hindrance to him leading the country over the next couple of years. It's sad. He's been a consequential president, a good president, but it's time for him to move on. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Supreme Court is broken. Our founders never intended for the president to be a king. They never intended the president to be above the law. And while I do agree there should be a certain level of immunity for a president acting within his or her official duties as president, I think that the Supreme Court, when making that adjudication, should have explained more what that was. And the one example that they gave of the president instructing his DOJ to draft a letter throwing the election into chaos is an example that should be on the other side of something that is not in the president's official duties. The Supreme Court should have been very clear that the president of the United States, when seeking to change the results of the election, is acting in their own personal interest and not in an official capacity as president of the United States. Campaigns have the absolute right to challenge results when they see or suspect that there is fraud. They challenge the results through the judicial process that comes out of their campaign. It is not something that should be done from the White House. But the Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled that, sure, use the Department of Justice if you want. It's basically what they said. And you cannot be held criminally liable for that. That's disgusting. Basically, the Supreme Court said, if you could make it into an official act, if you could stretch it to an official act, it's an official act. Well, what does that mean for Joe Biden? Right? I mean, Donald Trump's attorneys argued in court that the president of the United States could send SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponents. And as long as there was an official act, he could not be prosecuted. He could be impeached, but he could not be prosecuted for that act. I guess at least federally. I would imagine that this immunity actually extends to him being prosecuted at the state level as well. I didn't see the Supreme Court address that. I mean, I've only skimmed the opinion, but I was looking for that. Didn't look like they addressed that to me. So can Joe Biden theoretically send SEAL Team 6 right now to eliminate the Trump campaign? Can he do that? I mean, a lot of us, you've heard me say it. I think Trump is a threat to the Republic. I think that the thought of him being president of the United States, particularly with the powers that the Supreme Court just gave him, with the powers that the Supreme Court just gave the president, we should be doing everything we can to make sure that Donald Trump is not the president, because Donald Trump will use those powers. See, we've never had to have this conversation before in the United States of America, because we've never had a president as depraved as Donald Trump. We've never had to go here. This is completely uncharted territory because of the person in the White House, right? It's just that simple. There's nothing else you could say other than that we are being forced to have these conversations at this point in time only because of one man who basically scraped every ounce of power out of the White House, not for the benefit of the country, not for the benefit of his constituents and the people, not for the greater good, but for his own good, for his own well-being. And the court's like, sure, okay, go ahead, do that. You get to do that. You get to scrape every ounce of power as long as you can connect it to some sort of official act. And they created a test, and there'll be now evidentiary hearings for all of his trials about whether or not he's doing something officially. America, I don't know where this is going to end. Of all these justices on the Supreme Court, only the liberals and Clarence Thomas were appointed by a president that won the popular vote. Everybody else was appointed by somebody who was not as popular as the person they ran against. And yet here we are. They're making the rules. Supreme Court is basically a legislature in robes whose press releases are designed to look like legal opinions. To my progressive friends out there, it's okay to fly an American flag on the 4th of July or any other time, frankly. We need to stop allowing the right wing in this country, which I don't believe is at all patriotic right now. They're celebrating a Supreme Court ruling that basically allows the president to, act as if he's a king, as long as he can loosely connect it to some official act. That should be scary to you, and it should not seem at all patriotic. It is not at all what the founders of this nation intended for the president. The president was not supposed to be above the law, even in the execution of their official acts. It is okay for us to be patriotic, particularly on patriotic days like the founding of this nation. There's nothing wrong with celebrating this noble experiment, which is about to fail, by the way. I will be celebrating it fully. Now, I'll be spending a lot of time making sure my dogs don't freak out because it is the 4th of July and there's lots of fireworks. And those of you who have dogs know that this is not a happy day for dogs. They do not like the 4th of July. They do not like fireworks. They do not like it at all. And I will be spending a lot of time calming down these two animals, which bring so much joy to my life. I got to tell you, we don't deserve dogs. We really don't. We just don't. They are so much better to us than we are to them. Even those of us like me who absolutely adore their dogs and take them for car rides because they're in the mood to go for a car ride. We don't deserve them. They are spectacular creatures. And the 4th of July just drives them nuts. So I will be celebrating the 4th of July by taking care of some dogs that go a little nuts during fireworks because I don't want them to be miserable. But I'll also be talking about, a statement that I made on television that, people are pushing back on me. Now, you've been listening to me you've listened, you've heard that I think that the Democrats have options and they should probably exercise those options. Of course, Joe Biden will have to do that, and he'll have to make the patriotic choice. He'll have to make the patriotic choice to get out of the race on his own. I can't force him to do it. You can't force him to do it. The party can't force him to do it. His family's not going to tell him to get out. The conversation with the family is never to get out. The conversation with the family is to get in. The family encourages you to stay in once you're in. I'm not going to tell him to get out. But should we wind up in November with the choice being Donald Trump or Joe Biden, I will absolutely vote for Joe Biden. I said on television today that, yeah, I think Joe Biden should get out, but if Joe Biden was in a coma and his opponent was Donald Trump, I'd be voting for Joe Biden. It is a very simple equation to me. Joe Biden is not going to destroy the Republic. Not going to happen. Joe Biden is not going to seek to enact revenge on his enemies. And some of you out there in conservative land are saying, well, what is Joe Biden doing to Donald Trump? Donald Trump tried to overthrow the election. Donald Trump engaged in sedition against the Republic. You don't think that he deserves to be punished for that? I think that we waited too long. I think that the punishment should have happened immediately. I think they should have impeached him that night. The delay in seeking punishment for Donald Trump allowed him to be rehabilitated, allowed for Republicans to realize that without Donald Trump, they're losing that base, that rabid base. It's the only thing that's kept them in this game politically. We would have impeached him that night. There would have been 350 votes to impeach in the House, and he would have been convicted in the Senate in 5 minutes. Those people were running for their lives. And then, a year later, they forgot. And our Justice Department took 2.5 years to bring charges, 2 years to appoint a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. That delay is why he's now back on the political scene, marching his armies towards Washington. And the Supreme Court just opened up the door for him. That delay, if Donald Trump is successful and regains the presidency, and I still don't believe he will. But I'll tell you what, Joe Biden's got to get out. If he regains the presidency, that delay will be why. Merrick Garland trying to act like he's above it all and trying not to seem partisan, give the guy an opportunity to just go. They underestimated the vanity of Donald Trump. They underestimated the hubris of Donald Trump, the narcissism of Donald Trump that would drive him to seek to win after he'd been defeated. Anybody else defeated like he was defeated, had that kind of mark on his record with January 6th, would have slithered away into the dustbin of history. Instead, Donald Trump is like a cockroach. Even after a nuclear attack, he's still going to be skirmishing around. It's sad. Scurrying around, I should say. People are going to say he's got to give up the podcast now. He doesn't know the difference between scurrying and skirmishing. Anyway, those are my real-time thoughts about what happened since Thursday. I still believe that Donald Trump will not win. But I think we've got a long way to go between now and then. And we can't just treat this as a fait accompli, including who our nominee is. I think Joe Biden's a great man. I think he's a patriot. I think he's done a lot for this country. He needs to do one more thing, and that is not run. All right, I think we've all had enough of each other. Have a great 4th of July holiday weekend. I hope you're getting some time off. And I'm going to remind you now, as I always do, to seek the truth. Question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there, and I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again next week to tell you the truth as I see it. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for listening to the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.